Welcome to MilSpouse Matters, the podcast dedicated to encouraging military spouses. I'm your host, Jen McDonald, and I was a military spouse for 30 years until my husband retired. We lived all around the world, raised 4 kids, and dealt with all the challenges and adventures of military life, just like you. Over the years, I came to believe that we military spouses are only stronger together. So whether you're a new or more seasoned spouse, whatever life is throwing your way, let's talk about it. So hello and welcome to this episode of the MilSpouse Matters podcast. This is your friend Jen, and I am so glad to be joining you today. Today, it's going to just be me, and we're going to talk about some of the challenges military families can face during the holiday season, especially regarding moving during the holidays or going through the deployment of a spouse during the holiday season. And so it'll just be me today. We have had some amazing interviews this past season, and I hope if you haven't had the chance to listen to them, that you'll take some time over these next few weeks, which hopefully will be a time to slow down and go back and listen to those. I believe we're up to episode 111 or so now. If you haven't had time yet to go through the back catalog, there's lots of good stuff there. I have gotten to meet and speak with so many amazing people. This podcast has just really opened doors that I would not have had before. And some of them now I consider friends. And so that's been really, really cool. And I think that they all have something unique to offer you. After this episode, I have one more interview coming up next week. It will be with the authors of the book called Unwavering. And that's pretty incredible. They have quite the story. So I hope you'll tune in for that. As always, welcome to all listeners. I appreciate you, whether you are just tuning in for the first time or you've been listening for a long time. Thank you so much for joining me and taking your time. If you haven't yet, I would love it if you left a review in your favorite podcast app, wherever you're listening. That helps me so much. And if you have read one of my books, leaving reviews for those on Amazon, Goodreads, Barnes & Noble, wherever you have gotten them, that helps put these things in front of other potential readers. And it is a really great way to support authors that you like. So hopefully, if you don't like it, then feel free to skip this part. If you did like it, I would really appreciate a review. It's really been quite a busy past few months with the release of my new book. That has taken quite a lot of time. It's called MilSpouse Matters, Sharing Strength Through Our Stories. So I have been a little hit or miss with the podcast because of that, but I'm hoping to get back onto a regular schedule in 2024. But that book is a compilation of interviews from military spouses, military widows that I was able to interview at the Air Force Enlisted Village a few years ago that were from the Korean and Vietnam War era, along with interviews from modern day spouses, and of course, a whole lot of my own family stories from 3 decades as a military family. And I think the best part about it is just realizing, even though things are always changing, so much remains the same, of wanting that connection, of having to find the strength to get through hard times as a military family, of living all around the world and going through deployments. And even though they didn't have FaceTime or whatever back then, they still understood what it felt like to have their loved one go off and not be able to reach them when they wanted and having to live without them. So it's been a labor of love, this book. It's taken me a few years to do, and it's finally out this fall. So I hope that if you love reading, you can grab it on Kindle Unlimited for free if you subscribe to that, or Kindle, paperback, hardback. So I'll leave a link in the show notes for that. Also this month, I'm going to be offering 20% off of my 5-day deployment devotional. It is a digital download on my website with the code December23. Just capital D for December, the number 23 all together. And again, you can get 20% off that devotional. I thought this would be a good time for those of you going through it. You might really benefit from that. I also wanted to point to a brand new blog post I have on the site that was written by a guest writer, Danielle Keach, and it is about having a baby overseas, and it shares the perspective of her recent birth experience in Okinawa. And then she pulled some other military spouses that have had a baby living overseas in different locations around the world. It's really informative. And if you are facing that or possibly thinking about starting your family while you're living overseas, lots of good info. And I hope you will check that out. Again, I will put the link in the show notes for that. One really fun thing I have done more of this year is speaking, whether it's online or in person. I love speaking to spouses groups or talking to a book club. So if you would like to find out about connecting with me to either speak virtually or come to an event you're hosting or a military spouse group, I would love to give you more information about that. My heart is for military spouses and providing encouragement in this unique lifestyle we're living. So just connect with me on my website and we can talk about it more if that's something you're looking for. I also want to give a shout out to listeners around the world. I haven't done this in a while, but I was just looking at this year's stats right before I started recording. And I think it's kind of cool, all the countries that you guys are listening from. Of course, the US is the main one, but then some other big ones are Ireland, Germany, Japan, Canada, UK, France, Italy, Philippines, and even New Zealand. Hey to all of you that are listening from there. That's so fun. And a few other ones. I think I have like 50 countries this year that the podcast has been listened to. So that's awesome. Singapore, Spain, Australia, Guam, of course, we have military bases there in Korea, and even the Netherlands and Finland. So that is super fun. And I really, really appreciate you all listening and sharing. I also have some new episodes over on the Christian Milspouse podcast. If you're interested in that, I'm putting out some new content over there sporadically. And again, hope to start doing that a little bit more regularly. So again, today we are talking about military moves and deployments during the holidays. We're going to talk about moving first, and then we will talk about deployment. Now, I know that many of you are going through upheaval. My own family, we have had some extended family issues over the past year or so that have kind of turned into longer term than we realized they would be. And so if you are coming up to the holidays and you maybe aren't feeling it, you aren't happy, you would like for this to just be over with, I feel you. It's a different reason for me this year, but I totally get it of having to kind of muster up that enthusiasm for the holidays. And I've certainly been there as far as military life goes, going through multiple holiday seasons without my husband at home or moving right before or right after Christmas. It just adds an extra layer of stress, and it is not fun to go through that during the holiday season. So first, let's talk about surviving a military move during the holidays. I wrote a blog post for Military by Owner. I work for them as their content editor, and I thought I might share some of my tips from that blog post. We had made a move to Hawaii right before the holiday season, and you know how it goes when you move overseas. We were coming from Germany. Your things don't arrive quickly. So we got notice that our household goods were going to be delivered on December 19th. And I remember at the beginning of December saying, it's probably going to happen. It's just Murphy's Law. We're going to get our things right before Christmas. And sure enough, we did. To me, I wanted to get the house ready. I kind of wanted to skip the whole holiday thing. And my kids were like, absolutely not, our 4 kids. And I realized we needed to do something to mark the holiday aspect of that month versus just focusing on getting ourselves unpacked. So in the middle of receiving our household goods, trying to get the house set up, and then also the impending holidays, what did we do? What were some things that worked for us? So I thought I would share some of these with you. So my first tip would be, if you are going through a move during this holiday season, to let go of your expectations, both for whatever you normally do during the holidays, and if you're that kind of person that you move in and you're like, I'm going to get set up in a week, maybe let that go, because that's just going to add stress. Moving is stressful enough. Tack on holidays, that's going to be a little bit crazy. So you might even still be in temporary lodging. So for the time being, just give yourself a whole lot of grace. Lay aside any expectations that you would put on yourself. Give yourself permission to do what you can and don't stress over what is unfinished. If you have managed to find a space to sit down and you maybe have a little Charlie Brown type Christmas tree, that is a success. For that move that we made to Hawaii that year, we had neighbors that had just moved as well. We had met some people in TLF, and we just decided that we were all going to get together on Christmas and kind of join forces. So we bought pies, etc., from the store. We ate off of paper plates. We sat on moving boxes, and it was a lot of fun. We played cards. We had a card table. We watched movies, and it really was quite a relaxed and fun Christmas. Maybe one of the best Christmases ever, because I wasn't on my feet cooking all day like normally I would be. My second tip would be to start some new traditions. So this holiday season is going to look different, and your regular routines and things that you might like to do will be out the window. This is a great time to just focus on your own family unit, whether you have children or it's just you and your spouse. What new traditions can you create that you might even decide to start observing every year? Whether it's just watching a movie while snuggled up with hot cocoa with your unpacked boxes in the background, a new board game, walking around and looking at the lights, do something different and try to add some fun to this time. My third tip would be to keep your sense of humor. Christmas dinner might mean takeout or pizza, and that is okay. It will not be like a Norman Rockwell picture. I have a feeling your family will remember the togetherness more than the chaos of moving. Keep your sense of humor, have a great attitude, and just have to laugh sometimes at the craziness of military life. My fourth tip would be to accept help. If you have new neighbors or even just your spouse or your children offering to help, accept it. Even if it's not how you would normally do things, take some of the pressure off yourself. For instance, that move, my teens offered to unpack the kitchen and I let go a little bit and let them do it. I'm a little controlling about my kitchen because I love to cook. And it did take me some months to find out where certain little gadgets and pans were, but it was well worth having that task out of the way and letting them help. That helped me out and it gave them something that they felt really good about too, that they had helped out. My fifth tip would be to remember to rest. So between moving and settling into a new location, you might feel like it's lazy to take a break or that if you sit down, there's always something to be working on. And I get that. I'm like that in my normal life. And at a move on, that just kicks into this high gear where I don't even feel like I can sit down. There's something to be unpacked. There's something to be hung up. There's always something more to be done in a military move. But you don't always have to be working on something. It's your holiday too. Remember that. My grandmother used to have a saying, I'm not sure where she got it from, and I think I have mentioned it on this podcast before. And she would say, you're a human being, not a human doing. And that is something that I have to repeat to myself. And I think that is good advice for a military family. Take some time for a nice long nap or a walk or just sitting around and doing something fun. Those boxes will still be there when you get to them. So I hope that if you are moving during this most wonderful time of the year, that you are able to pause and also enjoy this holiday season. Now, another common challenge that many military families go through during the holiday season is the deployment of the active duty member. I have certainly been there. And I know so many of you are there right now. I have heard from you. I know that some of you are going through your very first deployment of your spouse, and it's scary and you're lonely. And I completely get that. And I just want you to know that you are not alone. My husband's first deployment was over 20 years ago, and I still remember everything about it. He was leaving to go to Iraq, and I believe he was shipping out the day after Christmas. Everything had a cloud over it because we knew what was coming. I was scared about the location, the way things were in the world at that time. When your spouse is going somewhere where you know that other people want to do them harm, it's not a great feeling. And even if your spouse is somewhere that is, quote, safe, it's still a big upheaval. It's still lonely and it has fears that go along with it. Now, how do you get through the holidays while your spouse is deployed? The ache of deployment underlies everything, but it's really intensified during the holidays. Every song, every well-meant gesture, every gift seems to remind you of your aloneness, going to your children's holiday parties alone, going to their concerts alone, shopping, gift wrapping, setting up the tree. You're doing all of those things most likely alone. Yet I knew while my husband was deployed during the holidays, I wanted to just sit in my aloneness and just sit and feel all the sadness, because somehow if I didn't feel it, it would mean I didn't care about what he was going through. I'm not saying it's logical, but it's what I felt. I did have to muster up the strength to fake it because I had 4 children that were looking at me and they still deserved a holiday. And it wasn't easy or fun. And I had many moments of crying alone or giving a vent to really out of proportion crying at a silly Hallmark movie. But I did get through it, and I know that you will too. One thing I will tell you is if you don't have someone at home to help spur you on to getting out of your house, give one of your friends permission to talk you into doing some of the things you'd normally do, like going to watch the tree lighting or even a little shopping, because a few moments out might help you forget for a time. But remember, do what you want to do and don't feel that you have to be on for anyone's expectations. To me, that is different than trying to make things better for your kids. I gave up sending cards. I think that first year we did used to do that every year. Don't anymore. I didn't bake cookies necessarily or feel obligated to participate in anything I didn't want to. So give yourself that permission. Those who love you will understand. You also have to think about that if you're facing a deployment during the holidays, it can be compounded by distance from extended family or if you're living in another country. So you may want to consider some alternative ways of celebrating Christmas, and then maybe you'll find a little bit of that holiday spirit. And I think this is kind of along the same lines as moving during the holidays. You're going to do things differently, and that is okay. So maybe what about skipping the gifts? Now, if you have kids, this is probably something you would want to talk about or maybe not do this, but if it's just you and your spouse and you're just like, I'm not giving gifts, I don't care about getting gifts, just skip it. It takes that pressure off of you. If you have children at home, think about maybe taking a trip together or getting tickets to an event. I would talk about it, get a consensus, and kind of all agree on it versus just kind of springing that on your kids. Or if your spouse is returning soon after the holidays, I've known families that kept all the gifts and waited until they got home to open them together. Those are definitely some options that just depends on how your family wants to handle it. Another thing you might want to do is, if you're not wanting to give gifts, give to an organization that you want to support, such as the USO or other military-oriented organization or something local or whatever it is that you feel like you want to give back to. If you're living overseas, that is a whole different thing because you're so far from home. So maybe take this time to embrace the different to you celebrations in your area, and you'll experience the holidays in a whole new way. Whether you are living on an island and go to the beach for the day, or you go to your first Christkindlmarkt in Europe or somewhere else, trying something new, whether it's a food or activity, could help you get out of that holiday funk a little bit. I think it's also important to focus on quality time. For me and my kids, I tended to focus more on experiences rather than piles of more gifts, just thinking about things like watching the sunrise with, a cup of coffee or a cup of hot cocoa, taking a day to just watch all the holiday movies you all like, gift everybody a new book, spend a quiet day reading together. If you've recently moved and you're going through deployment, also been there, maybe this is the time to reach out and host a cookie exchange or an ornament exchange or something with your new neighbors. One of our best memories and just such an easy thing to do is just to load up all the kids, our dog. We would bring popcorn and hot cocoa and just drive around the base and look at all the lights on Christmas Eve. Another way to cope with getting through the holidays while your spouse is deployed is to focus outward, kind of along the lines of giving back. Drop off cookies or cards to other deployed spouses if you live off base, elderly neighbors, or take a look at local nursing homes. Also, holiday goodies or handmade cards might be appreciated by the gate guards or other people that are working on the days where everybody else is typically off, security forces, firefighters, and others. I have found that looking outward, finding somebody else to focus on has been a really good way for me to get out of that just kind of spiral of feeling sorry for myself and feeling really depressed and thinking, is this ever going to end? I would also say create some new memories. If you are going through a deployment or long separation from your spouse, you might feel it's important to keep regular traditions for everyone's sake, and that can be a really good thing, especially for kids, to kind of keep those touchstones and regular things that you would normally do, but maybe add a new twist. There was one year, but my older two were grown and out of the house, and it was just myself and my younger two girls who were teenagers, and we had a lot of invitations to come to people's houses for dinner that Christmas, and we just said, I can't remember what excuse I said. I think I just told everybody that we had plans. And our idea was we were staying in our pajamas all day. We were having a Gilmore Girls and Christmas movie marathon. And we fixed our favorite dishes just for us and literally sat around and ate food and watched movies and TV all day. And it was a great day. And it was just, that was what we wanted to do. And that's not something we would normally do with the guys around, right? So, and then take a nice long nap, right? I would also say, give yourself permission to handle the holidays however you want to without apology. Whatever you decide to do or not do, remember that the holidays during a deployment can be stressful and sad. Don't add to this burden by placing unrealistic expectations on yourself, because next year's holiday season will roll around again right before you know it, and you can go back to all the things you normally do. So whether you're feeling more Grinch-like than festive these days, I hope that these tips and thoughts will help you as you go through these holidays and make them less of a time to slog through so we can just get it behind you and maybe help you make some new memories and have some new perspective. As always, I want to remind you that if you are going through some upheaval and change and during deployment or a move and you are just not coping well, or you feel like you need help beyond a few tips like what I've given, please take that seriously and please take care of yourself. You are too important. You don't have to work through all of these things alone. You can connect with a chaplain on your military installation. You can utilize military family life counselors. Connect with Military OneSource. Either call them or utilize the chat feature on their site. And there is also online therapy covered by TRICARE, which is called Telemind, and it's TELEMIND. Remember that you're not alone in your struggles. I do have an episode with a spouse that went through debilitating anxiety, and she talks about how she worked with it and the resources she found, how she was able to come through that even stronger, and what help she needed to utilize to get through that time. And it is episode 99 with Erin, who is known as the Short Wife on Instagram and Facebook. So I will link to that episode as well. But please take care of yourself and don't try to handle everything alone. You don't have to. Whatever you're going through, wherever you're stationed, if your spouse is not with you, please know that my heart is with you and I am thinking of you and I'm praying for all my military spouse friends around the world. So just remember, friends, you are brave, you are strong, and you have got this, even if you're alone or moving during the holidays. I will talk to you next time. Goodbye, my friends. Thanks for listening to the MilSpouse Matters podcast. You can connect with me at jen-mcdonald.com or on social media as @MilSpouseMatters. You can find even more military life support with my books, You Are Not Alone, Encouragement for the Heart of a Military Spouse, and MilSpouse Matters, Sharing Strength Through Our Stories, as well as my other podcast, The Christian MilSpouse. Love the show? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review wherever you're listening, and then share it with someone else who could use it too. Until next time, have a great week.